My energy had been shifting for months. I chose to ignore it. My attention was scattered and I was totally distracted by everything and everyone around me. And I chose to ignore it. The writing was on the wall. I chose to ignore it. And one afternoon, I went from having everything I thought I always wanted to having nothing at all. For 14 years, I poured my heart and soul into an interior design company that I had built from the ground up. I had a strong reputation, a solid team, and a beautiful portfolio. But somewhere along my path towards outward success, I lost the internal vision as to why I was doing any of it at all, and something cracked. Days, nights, weekends, creating, designing, proving that I was worthy. Thousands of hours, hundreds of clients, 5 employees, all of my time, all of my attention, all of my energy, building a business while my ability to connect started to crumble. So when my top employee told me that she wanted to buy the company or else she was leaving and taking a couple of the other employees with her, I was left with a decision to make, and that decision led me to sell. 6 months of negotiations, tears, uncertainty, confusion, and frustration, all leading to one afternoon where the signatures and transfer of ownership took less time than it does to have a cup of coffee. My life changed dramatically. I had stopped listening. I had stopped communicating with intention, and I had gone into survival mode. I stopped paying attention to what really mattered, and I got distracted by all the outward success more than the inner connection. I ignored those red flags, and that ignorance cost me my business. Has anything like that ever happened to you? Where you knew something was wrong, but you intentionally chose to ignore it, and it cost you. Maybe it wasn't everything, but it cost you something. Well, I'm here to tell you that the moment I stopped ignoring the signals and got intentional about how I communicate, everything changed. According to Harvard Business Publishing, 85% of leaders are communicating with old connection and leadership frameworks. And that old way of communicating is costing small to mid-sized organizations over $1.2 million every year due to poor productivity, increased turnover, workplace conflicts, and broken trust. And at home, that outdated method of communication is one of the fastest paths to resentment, frustration, and separation. The challenge is, most people think that you need to speak louder or have all the answers to communicate with. Many people walk into a conversation, a meeting, an interview, thinking about what you're going to say. What's my point? What's my argument? What do I need them to understand? And you wonder why nothing lands the way that you want it to. I spent years thinking that I was a super strong communicator. It turns out I was just a strong talker. There's a difference. When your focus is primarily on your point, your argument, what you want, you're not communicating with intention. You're focusing on your needs, not the needs of your audience, not the needs of your clients, your employees, your partners. But when you communicate with intention, when you stop asking, what am I going to say? And start asking, who is this message for? And how do they need to hear it? That single shift alone helps you to gain clarity on your topic, better understand the outcome you want for your audience, and allows you to emotionally connect with who you want to be when you show up. And you stop ignoring those red flags. Because strong communication isn't just about what you say, it's how you connect with others while you're saying it. Intentional communication is about listening to understand, leaning into the discussion, the conversation, the person in front of you, and knowing when to pause, lean back, and adjust your own communication methods in real time. That statistic of 85% of leaders communicating with outdated frameworks isn't the number that astounds me the most. It's not the thousands of hours I spent building my business, or the hundreds of beautiful projects that I designed, or even the 5 employees that I left behind. Nope. The number that is the most incredible to me is 1. I was the one factor that cost me everything. And you are the one factor that can change everything for you in the relationships that you're in and the communication language that you use. The gap between your communication doesn't mean that you've been saying it all wrong. It just means that there's opportunities for you to say it even better and in ways that allow you to connect on a deeper level. And by closing that communication gap, you are one step closer to closing the gap between who you are today and who you are becoming as a great leader and a phenomenal speaker. A leader and a speaker that understands their audience and responds to their audience's needs in real time. Through my leadership journey as an interior designer and now a leadership coach and empowerment speaker, I've created a framework called the Design of Intentional Communication. Design is an acronym for the 6 tools of what I believe are communication success. Discover drive, evaluate energy, sense style, identify influencers, gauge gradient, and navigate needs. Now, I value your time, your energy, and your attention. So today, rather than cram all of those 6 tools into one presentation and only give you a little bit about a lot of different things, I'm going to go deep on 2 of the most powerful tools that are grounded in behavioral science and 25 years of me leading teams, projects, and transitioning with intention to a better space of communication and leadership. 2 tools that you can start using immediately in your next conversation. And before I wrap up this entire talk, I'll give you a chance to take the entire design framework with you before you leave today. Here's what I know for certain. Energy is one of the most crucial elements of connecting and understanding. Without it, there's no emotion. There's no urgency. There's no compassion. And there's no real connection without energy. When I owned my design firm, I had one key employee that started out with me when I started. She was methodical, deliberate, super focused. She didn't bring her emotions to the office. She brought her strategy every single day. And she was exceptional at what she did. But on occasion, I found it challenging to work with her. With my big ideas and passionate approach to all things, I would come flying into the office, flailing my arms, tossing my energy around in theories like confetti at a birthday party, excited, talking fast, wanting to start on whatever wild idea I had right now. And I would look at her, and she would just be sitting there, staring at me, blank, no expression on her face. Honestly, at that point, I thought she was just difficult to work with or just completely didn't get what it was that I was trying to tell her. But it wasn't the case at all. She was processing. I was judging. She was analyzing all that energy that I had just thrown at her. And I was sitting there wondering why it was taking her so long to speak up. Her way of thinking was the complete opposite of mine. But over time, we adapted. She learned to anticipate my excitement for opportunity. I learned to give her space before expecting a response. I stopped coming in all hot and heavy all the time, and she started setting aside time specifically to help me think these wild and crazy ideas all the way through from beginning to end. We acknowledged, we shifted, we adjusted on the fly, and sometimes I'd warn her on my way back into the office just so she could get ready for me. And we learned how to communicate from places of intention. So the work stayed the priority, not the breakdowns on how we spoke to each other. And because we figured all of this out so early in our relationship, she stayed with me for 12 years. That kind of communication, that's loyalty built on intention. That's trust anchored in understanding. Here's what I know now that I didn't know when I first started my company back in 2010. Most of what we communicate has absolutely nothing to do with the words coming out of our mouths. Nothing. Back in 1960, excuse me, Back in the 1960s, communications researcher Albert Mehrabian concluded that 93% of communication is nonverbal. 93%. Which means the actual spoken word accounts for only 7% of what someone is actually receiving from you. 7%. The rest of it, you've got the 7% of the spoken word. You've got tone, pitch, inflection, pace, and volume. Those all add up to 38%. There's a 55% gap remaining on how we communicate, and that 55% is through our body language, our facial expressions, the energy that we bring into the room, how we move around. So when I would come flying into the office, flailing my arms, all excited, energy through the roof, she wasn't hearing my ideas. My employee was trying to just make sense of everything that I was surrounded with. My face, my posture, my pace, my urgency. And what she was experiencing in those early days of us working together wasn't always what I had meant to give to her. I just wanted her to get on the same page as me, but I didn't know how to communicate with someone so vastly different. This is why evaluating energy matters, and why actions really do speak louder than words. Before you can read someone else, you must first understand what signals you're broadcasting out to them. How are you showing up? What energy are you bringing into the room? Think about somebody in your life right now, a colleague, maybe it's a client, or even a business partner or an employee, whose silence you have misread as something that it might not be. Or the other way around, maybe there's somebody that has a lot more energy than you that you just don't quite understand. What were they trying to tell you that you weren't paying attention to? That gap between what was being sent by them and what was being received by you, that is where communication breaks down. And that is exactly the gap this evaluation energy tool is designed to close. Before your next important conversation, I encourage you to take 60 seconds and check your energy. Don't necessarily focus on what you're going to be saying to them. Focus on the energy that you're bringing into the conversation. Focus on the energy that you're going to give out to the person in front of you. How are you showing up? Are you focused and deliberate and intentional on what your energy is giving off? Or are you coming in on two wheels, all frantic and excited? Are you walking in the room down in the dumps, low energy, not really excited to be there? Are you genuinely happy, calm and cool, and excited for the opportunities in front of you? The question is, what is the person going to see and feel from you when you enter the room? Because your communication starts with your energy before you say even one single word. Now you know how to evaluate the energy in a room. The next question is, once you're in the conversation, how do you know which direction to take it in? How much detail do you give? How much detail do you ask for? How big do you go with the idea? How small do you actually keep the concept? How do you know what the person standing in front of you or the audience listening to you actually needs in that moment? This is where the second tool comes in, gauging gradient. In 25 years of working with people, I have learned that every single person that you will ever encounter, that you sit across from, that you get into a conversation with, is operating from one of two lenses. They're either living in the details, the day-to-day, the process, the discipline, the how-to, or they're living in the big picture, the vision, the possibility, the where is all of this going mindset. Neither one is wrong. Both, actually, are quite necessary. But here's the communication breakdown that happens more often than you think. You show up with a really big picture. They need the details. Or you show up with all the details, and they really want to know what the primary point is. A few weeks ago, I sat down with a new coaching client. Super sharp guy, very accomplished, early 60s, really trying hard to see what retirement looks for him. But that's why he became a coaching client. He can't see that far ahead. He has spent a lifetime building a business, a reputation, creating a discipline that has served him well through his entire career and most of his relationships. He knows how to make a plan. He knows how to show up. He knows how to do the work. He knows how to execute. But what he doesn't know how to do very well was look far enough into the future to see where all of this work, all of these details were really guiding him towards. So what did I do? As a coach, I turned around, I grabbed my dry erase maker, I walked to the whiteboard, and I started mapping it out. I wasn't writing down what his to-do list was. I wasn't creating quarterly goals for him, not his next 90-day plan. We were writing down his life, where he'd been, what he'd done, what it meant to him, what it caused him to do afterwards. And then we switched gears and we figured out where he wanted to go and what he wanted to be once he retired and what he wanted to do over the next 5 to 10 years. What did retirement really look for him? Big picture, laid out like a blueprint on that huge wall. And when I was done drawing, he sat back in his chair, and after a long moment, he said, "Wow, I have made to-do lists my entire career, but I have never seen a big picture blueprint like this. This is incredible." That moment wasn't all about the information on the board. It wasn't about the fact that I had a dry erase marker and I started scribbling. It wasn't even about anything that I had said in our meeting. That moment was about gauging his gradient so he and I could get on the same page. That moment was about connecting with a man who yearned to be heard, who wanted to be understood, but in his 60-plus years, no one had taken the time to ask him or show him where his gaps were, and he didn't know that he was unable to see the big picture until somebody took the time to show it to him. That shift was integral to our ability to communicate on a deeper, more meaningful level as a client and a coach. He didn't need more detail. He had detail for days. What he needed was the big picture. lay it out in front of him so he could finally see what he had been building towards all along. And thankfully, using the gradient tool, I was able to present to him a solution in a way that he fully understood. Every person you communicate with is operating on some sort of gradient. On one end, you've got the big picture thinker, vision driven, possibility focused, needs to know the where before the how. They want to see the overall outcome before you even start talking strategy. You give them too much detail too fast, they're out. They shut down. Big picture thinkers, they ask general questions. What's your vision here? What's the point of all this? Or they'll say something like, oh, cool, Brad's having a party on Saturday? Sounds like fun, let's go. On the other end, you have these detailed thinkers, process-driven, sequential, deliberate, needs to know the what and the how at the same time. They want the data, the steps, the evidence. You give them the big picture too fast, and they get overwhelmed. They get lost. And they try to pull you back in and say, well, what's the process? How are we going to get there? Or are there any deadlines? Are there budgets? Do we need to crunch the numbers first? Or they'll say something like, ooh, a party? Well, where is it? What time does it start? Who else is going to be there? What are I supposed to bring? Is there any special costumes that we're supposed to be wearing? What's going on? Details versus cool, let's go. With this concept of gauging a person's gradient of thinking, before you start a conversation, before you enter into a discussion, it's a game changer. One clue is all you need, and the whole conversation shifts. Because if you know that they are a big thinker, you can go in with a big idea. But if you know they need the details first, you start with the smaller steps. Think about a conversation you've been having for a while. Maybe it's at work with your boss or your coworkers, or maybe it's at home. Maybe it's just a simple project or a negotiation that you've been working on, where you feel like you keep missing the point with the person that you're trying to connect with. Are you showing up with the detail or the big picture? Are they looking for the detail or are they looking for the big picture? Are you painting the vision when what they need is the actual clear and steady path? That might be your gradient gap. And fortunately, knowing how to view by asking certain questions, do you need the details or can you see the big picture, may help you close that gap. Before your next important conversation, take 30 seconds, could be 15, and ask yourself one question. Does this person need the big picture or do they need the step-by-step instructions? Answer that first, and then decide how you're going to show up and how you're going to serve them in the conversation. Because the most intentional communicators don't just know what they want to say, they know what the person in front of them needs to hear. And that's the difference between a conversation that lands and one that doesn't. 2 tools: evaluate energy, engage gradient. 2 of the primary tools that you can use to completely change the quality of a conversation, to completely alter how you show up as a leader, to completely shift how you are as a speaker. Awareness of yourself first, and awareness of the audience second. But when you walk into the space, the audience comes first, and then you shift and adjust accordingly. When those things align, it's not just the conversation, but it's in the relationship. The trust is more solid. People have a better feeling of connecting with you because what's possible when 2 people, 3 people, an entire group, an organization, or a community shift, it's magical. I've seen it happen in boardrooms. I've seen it happen at networking events. I've seen it when a speaker is on stage and their energy shifts because halfway through their talk, they start reading the room. They make a shift so they can connect deeper with their audience. It's intentional. And as I explained to you earlier, I've been a part of that shift in coaching sessions. And I was fortunate enough to live the gift of that shift when I started intentionally seeking to understand my employees, my friends, my clients, and my family and my audience, whether it's 1 or 1,000, rather than force my energy or perspective on them, expecting them to follow a leader that wasn't connected with their best interests in mind. This design of intentional communication framework changed how I show up in every area of my life. Which brings me back to where we started. Remember that employee I told you about? The one who sat stone-faced while I tossed ideas around like confetti? The one who stayed with me for 12 years because we worked so hard to understand each other? That employee that I originally thought was so difficult and impossible to reach? She is the person who believed in what I had built, even while I was distracted, ignoring the challenges I didn't want to face, and allowing other people's energy to influence my decisions both as a leader and a communicator. She's the one who shifted and stepped up and bought my company. She believed in all of it enough to sign her name to it. In the time it took to drink a cup of coffee, I handed over my company to my top employee. Because the writing was on the wall. It had been for months, but like I said earlier, I was choosing to ignore it. This wasn't just about the sale, but about our relationship, and I almost missed all of it. Because in the beginning, I wasn't evaluating her energy, I was judging it. I wasn't gauging her gradient, big picture, small details. I was frustrated by it. But the moment I got intentional, everything changed. Not overnight and not perfectly, but with enough awareness to build something real, something that I thought was everything I wanted, but something I had eventually grown out of while others grew into it. I built something that lasted and something worth buying because I upped my game as a communicator. I changed my methods as a leader. And that is what intentional communication and leadership does. It doesn't just improve your conversation skills. It changes what you build in your business and your relationships and with the people that matter. And if that's the work that you want to do in your organizations, in your teams, in your relationships, that is the exact work that I built this design framework for. I want you to be able to use the full design framework, all 6 letters, as soon as you are done with this session. So here's the QR code for you to download all 6 of the tools. Discover Drive, Evaluate Energy, Sense Style, Identify Influencers, Gauge Gradient, and Navigate Needs. All 6 of those yours for the taking. You just have to scan the QR code. And the coolest thing is that you can take these tools, you can take this information, and you can start using it in the very next conversation that you have. Because remember, this framework, it's just a guide. But you are the one that has to decide to pay attention. You are the one that needs to check your energy before you walk in. You are responsible for reading the room. It's your job to ask yourself, does this person really need the destination, or do they need more detail so they can wrap their head around it? You are the one thing that can make a difference in the connection and the outcome. And that decision, that 60, 30, or 15 seconds of intention before every important conversation, that's the design. The only question I have for you at the end of all of this is, are you paying attention to your audience and your clients and your employees' needs? Or are you more focused on what you want to give them? Because when you answer that question with intention, everything changes. And that's the intentional design. Thank you.